Oh my gosh, I have to do this interview. I'm so scared. Everyone's gonna think I'm a filmmaker, doctor, or whatever I am. I don't know what to do. I'm panicking. I'm scared. I need ice cream.
It's okay. I think we should both have ice cream, but it's okay. Let's get the questions together and let's get it going. Come on.
Okay, let's start the show. Welcome everybody to GFR Spotlight. My name is Peter and I'm with our great guest. So why don't you tell everybody, who are you?
Thank you. I'm Robin Crawford. I am a GFR mom. I also am a public relations exec, and I have grown up in the McLean, Great Falls area. So I'm a lifetime resident of the area.
Wait a second, so public relations exec. I want to hear more about that. What does that entail? So tell me about public relations.
Well, it's, I have to say, when I first started in public relations or PR, I didn't really know what it was, but I knew it sounded like fun and really interacting with different audiences on behalf of companies and organizations. And that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. I work with companies to generate visibility, to help them manage crises, to raise awareness about issues, and really, help companies and organizations and countries be strategic in the way that they're talking to and interacting with different audiences and stakeholders. And that could be general consumers, it could be members of Congress, it could be businesses, but working across the board to both elevate awareness and then also, when crises arise, really help companies navigate how they're interacting with these audiences and managing a crisis.
The image I had in my head is I picture, like in a movie, George Clooney coming around in a room talking about the person, like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to act like this, you need to talk and carry yourself like this. When we were setting up, you mentioned how like public relations is not often what people think it is. So what is public relations?
I do some of that George Clooney stuff, and I tell I'm up. I have a client that I'll put on camera, and I'm up, making sure that they look good and primping and preening them and telling them what to say and what not to say. And I also then, you have wonderful days where you're interacting with your client and having lunch at the Four Seasons. And then, 2 hours later, you're crawling around on a stage floor, taping down cords to make sure people don't, in your fancy suit and heels, to make sure that people don't trip over them. And it stays safe and that lighting's good for your client. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work too, and a lot of late nights where you're preparing talking points, you're getting smart on issues and preparing for a presentation. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of being strategic in how you're interacting with words and messaging and audiences, and then also making sure you're packaging things up so that they are well received to a specific audience.
Okay, so to go in that, I like to throw you like a simple PR scenario. So let's say, what would you do as a PR person? The CEO of Coke says Pepsi during a speech. What would you do, you think, in that scenario?
I think in that scenario, it would be, depending on who was in the audience and if it was open to the media, that would be a situation where we would want to go to social media pretty quickly and find something that would help the executive recover and maybe do something that's a little lighthearted in terms of being nervous and sharing what the CEO was saying or thinking or reinterpreting. And then also working with the CEO to find some way to act on or make amends to his shareholders and people who are counting on him to promote the brand. So identifying a way that he could do something perhaps fun that then he could leverage. Because a lot of times you have the eyes of the world on you. Let's use that opportunity once you've tamp down the actual crisis, use that as an opportunity to pivot and use that attention for a good purpose.
Interesting. I feel like as a fake Pepsi executive, I feel like I'm already now in good hands.
Well, you gotta be clever about it and use those moments when you have your 15 minutes.
I can see it just talking right now these few minutes how much you love your job. Like, what do you think drives you? Like, what do you think inspires you every day in your profession?
You know, I am really blessed. I work in an industry where I technically am public affairs within a company of public relations experts. And with public affairs, that's really focusing on the intersection of government and business and consumers, which is a little different than selling widgets to consumers or product. I'm really brokering ideas, and I love that. And I also have the benefit of not being necessarily a specialist in a specific market sector. So healthcare or technology, I sort of touch all of it. I work with travel and tourism. Over the last year, I helped the Jamaica Tourism Bureau navigate the COVID pandemic and a closure where their airlift stopped to Jamaica, helping the country get back on its feet as a tourism economy. A third of its economy is tourism, helping the Minister of Trade and the Director of Trade and Tourism get back on their feet.
Wow.
and get the country back on its feet, developing a program to attract, keep tourists engaged, but then also get them thinking about booking their next trip once the country reopened in June.
Actually, I remember I was looking at your profile. Like, one of the things you said about your job is like helping the environment, community, and the world. So, would you like to elaborate on that? Like other things, like how you feel you help the world in your profession?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things, and one of the reasons I've stayed with my company so long too, is that Finn Partners as an organization is committed to working with companies and people and organizations that are doing good in the world. And we actually walk away from clients who are doing harm to people or in the environment. And over the course of my career, as I mentioned, I'm not necessarily a specialist. My specialty is public affairs and crisis communications and trade too. I've done a lot with countries and helping them sort of open up trade. But I've worked with solar installations, the largest concentrating solar installation when we opened it and launched it in Nevada, which was incredible to work in it was actually I was pregnant with Cameron at the time, but so it was 13 years ago, but working on renewable energy, which has sort of gone up and down and followed as we've had different elected officials in office and incentives that have gone to renewables, but worked with renewable energy. I did a campaign with the state of Virginia from 2016 to 2019, which really looked at Virginia's role in the creation of America, but we also were able to tackle some issues that were really important, looking at women, looking at race, looking at gender, looking at democracy, and putting a lens, a modern lens on those to really change the dialogue at a national and international level, which was amazing. Working on issues that are incredibly important to us as a society was wonderful and really fulfilling, and to have these conversations that are so different than than I had when I was in school. So it's been an incredible ride for sure. And from that, then I get to go to working with Roger Waters, who was the lead singer from Pink Floyd, doing a benefit concert for wounded veterans who are going through a music therapy program and helping generate awareness about an organization called MusicCorps that's based out of Walter Reed Medical Hospital. So it's, you never know what the day is going to bring, but working on important issues has been incredibly fulfilling.
You mentioned earlier you grew up in McLean, Virginia, where you are now. So tell us, what were you like? What was your life like growing up?
Growing up, I was, I grew up here. Which this area has changed tremendously since the 70s. My mom still lives in the house we grew up in, about 4 miles down the road.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd end up back in McLean, but I love the area. And once you are sort of steeped in Washington and all the wonderful things that you have here, both in the city and then 20 minutes outside of the city, being in what feels like the country, is amazing. As a kid, I played a lot of sports. I think my parents knew they needed to keep me busy. I played every summer. I swam on our swim team, Langley Club, and now my kids swim for Great Falls, and that initially was a little hard transition, but it was very formative to have had a swim team that was so supportive, that I grew up with, and it was sort of my life in the summer. At the same time, I'd kind of try to beg, borrow, and steal I had a couple friends that had horses, and I'd try to get close to the horses and find a way to be at the barn and do anything I could to ride a horse or take riding lessons. You
were talking earlier about sports, so what was like for you playing sports growing up?
I played a lot of sports, which I am thankful that I had the opportunity to try a variety of sports. And you try some sports and you're pretty good at the get-go. You try others and maybe you're pretty terrible, but you might like it. So I feel blessed that I had the exposure to a variety of things, from basketball to tennis to swimming to horseback riding to soccer to softball, and some of those sports I took and sort of ran with, and there were others that I loved, like soccer, where I really wanted to be great. I can't say I put all the effort in that was needed, and but I loved it, and I was not necessarily the fastest runner back in the day. Try me today, and I'd rather die than get beaten. But
I will try. What can you do now? What do you do now, sports-wise?
Well, I play tennis now on a women's team. I run a lot. I've done.
What do you mean a lot? What does a lot look like?
Well, I've run about 10 marathons and 2 ultras. I did a 50-miler.
Really?
The JFK, which is the longest continuously run ultramarathon, and that was something. But it was, from going from the kid who was the slow kid and sort of the last one to finish the lap to now being able to run 50 miles and feeling good about it has been an investment of time and focus and energy, and really just committing myself to doing something that I didn't think I could do. So if you find something that you love and you can find a passion for it, it doesn't matter if you start and you're not that great. You can always find a path forward to succeed in it in whatever way you find meaningful. I'm a big believer in sports being, regardless of whether you play in the state tournament or you're playing top level or in the bottom level. I feel like sports are such an important part of learning and growing. I was lucky enough, as I mentioned before, to play a lot of sports. I also then picked 2 of those sports and played them in college. I was on the equestrian team in my college, and I was also on the swim team in my college. And that, having that focus and also having the confidence, having played a variety of sports, gave me a boost when I actually was a walk-on for both of those sports and said, I'd like to do this, and I'm going to jump in the pool and start swimming now. And the coach was like, okay, she seems pretty confident. Let's have her do it. But it was, having that discipline and having that understanding of what being on a team means, and the commitment you're making to your teammates when you sign up, that you're going to show up and that you're not just going to be there physically, but you're going to show up mentally. You're going to come prepared, you're going to have your uniform ready, and you're also going to be on time. Those are the things that I think translate into the work world. When I'm interviewing candidates for positions at my company, I'm always excited to hear that someone's played an organized sport at a higher level. I think just having the understanding and the awareness that people are counting on you, that you need to come, you can't just show up and try to run the marathon. You need to train in a disciplined way. You need to take care of your nutrition. That same sort of discipline then carries over into the work world. And this became very clear to me at one point where I had this young woman I'd hired who'd played travel soccer, actually. And we were doing a series of interviews with people around the world, actually, in different time zones, where we were interviewing and trying to understand how a company was managing a certain process in their industry. And every time we had a conference call, she'd beat me. She'd be on the line before I was. And it started making me crazy. And then I realized, Leah is a soccer player. She knows that on time is late, that you need to be 2 minutes or 5 minutes early and fully prepared. She always came with questions. She was always right on. She was also incredibly good at taking feedback and soliciting feedback to make sure that she was delivering what I needed.
Okay.
So I think that, again, was part of her training in knowing what a coach would be looking for and how to use a coach in the best possible way, and sort of inserting your boss in that coach position. Okay. So I really enjoy having people who've played sports on my team, and they certainly, I think, are well positioned to advance through their career and sort of understand what's expected and have those dialogues that will elevate them to a higher position faster.
What would you tell kids or teens, whatever, like what do you think it'll take characteristics wise? What things they need to be to do something in your profession?
Coming into PR, we look for people who are curious, and I always am looking for people who are challenging themselves and continuing to look for and take on new opportunities and things that might be a little scary, but being confident enough to try new things and learn new things. At the same time, in terms of education, we're looking for good writers. We need folks who can talk. It's kind of a lost art these days, but actually communicate with and reach out to reporters on the phone and be able to give a concise pitch but writing, I'd say, is one of the most important skills in PR, to be able to both write on behalf of a client, to develop a pitch that's succinct. In terms of education, we start hiring interns in college, and actually really enjoy having interns who can be with us for a couple of summers until they graduate and learn the profession. A lot of the people coming into the profession are also, they've gotten masters in communications, but that's not necessary. Sometimes it gets you another look in a hiring process, but if you come in with great writing skills, with great presentation skills, and you're also eager to learn and stretch and grow, that's the tool set you need to come into PR. And then it's also a job that is not a 9-to-5 job. You have to have the willingness to say, I'll get up early and take the client to the morning show opportunity and get them on camera at 6 a.m. Or like I was doing last night, reach out to a media outlet at 10 p.m. asking them to change the copy on a story that your client had been interviewed for the day before. So it is, a always on profession, but it's also, I think, having that energy and that curiosity really makes it an exciting one too.
When somebody talks about Robin Crawford, passion? What's she enthusiastic about? So what would you say?
A lot of things interest Robin, but I'd have to say I'm passionate about sports and about having kids and adults and sort of a lifetime of sports and activity, because if you stop moving, you stop living. I'm passionate about finding an opportunity to have sports in your life that help you connect with people, help you have downtime for yourself, because we all need that. And I'd say that over the last year, more than ever, we need some downtime where we can disconnect and be out and have with our own thoughts. And it's amazing also when you go out and take a run, how you can reset. Everything seems to fix itself once you've gone out and gotten a little exercise. So for me, a lifetime of sports and continuing to figure out what the next sport and the next activity is something that's motivating to me, and it's also a challenge. With every sport, there's a new set of rules, there's a new set of experiences, and also an opportunity to make some new friends.
All right, and that's our show today. So my name is Peter. I'd like to thank our amazing guest Robin for appearing today.
Well, thanks for having me. How fun was this?
I completely agree, and thank you for calming my PR scareness. You were the best. So please, guys, make sure you like and subscribe, and maybe leave a comment below for who else should we spotlight on this series. So my name is Peter, and
I'm Robin.
You take care.
Cheers.